All right, I'm joined here with Athletic Director Ross Bjork. Ross, welcome back. I think the last time we had you here was day 109. I think we're a little past that. What are we at now, do you know?
You made me do some math right before we came on here. So today is day 293.
Okay.
So eventually I'll stop counting, but I think when I was here on day 109, I was talking about I want to be the new guy as long as possible, and I just need some grace because there's going to be things where, what was he thinking? And I can say, I'm just the new guy. I'm still learning. So 293, but those days will wind down here pretty quickly as we get to the end of year one.
Does anything still feel new at all?
You know, it really does because one, Ohio State's a big place, right? And so there's so many people to meet. There's so many touch points. I don't feel like I've gotten necessarily around the state enough. I was in Findlay a couple weeks ago. I made a couple other day trips here and there, but I need to touch more parts of the state. So there's going to be a lot of new things, I think, in year two that I still get a chance to be a part of. And then all the changes in college athletics, and then you're the new guy, and so you're building relationships. You're getting to meet people in the community, whether it's people here in Columbus or donors or city leadership, those kind of things. So there's still a lot of new pieces. I'm finding new restaurants as well. So those continue to pop up. So yeah, lots of new stuff. It's been awesome.
All right, well, most recently for you, Washington. I mean, just how was that experience? Yeah. What was that like?
Yeah, in college athletics, a lot of athletic directors have spent a lot of time in Washington, really the last 5 years, talking to Congress about federal legislation. So I was actually there last week making visits on Capitol Hill, and then the kind of the culmination of just sort of the spirit and the pageantry of all the things that I think our nation's capital stands for was going to the White House. Just an amazing experience for our players to see the history of that particular building, again, what it stands for in our country. The president and his staff could not have been more gracious with their time. The president spent over an hour around our team, whether during the ceremony, he impromptu invited all of the team and Coach Day, myself, President Carter, back to the Oval Office. Again, impromptu, that was not part of the schedule, the agenda, so people were kind of scrambling. But overall, just the aura of that building, the signification of winning a national championship, just a lot of cool moments for our players going by the Lincoln Memorial, just a lot of cool moments for our team in particular, and that's a memory that they'll have for the rest of their life. And then, when you sit in my chair, Coach Day, you're like, okay, how do we get back here? How do we repeat this? Because you want to hoist that trophy again. So a really cool moment this week in the nation's capital.
So looking back now at the football season as a whole, you finally have time to reflect on everything that had happened. I mean, just what lessons can you take away from that season for you, for Coach Day, for the players moving forward throughout the rest of your tenure?
When I stood on the stage during the national championship celebration, serving as the host of the MC of that, I said that how this team did this will be just as memorable as hosting the trophy, right? And obviously that's the what, the trophy's the what, but the how of all of this and how it really just unfolded, I think will be what people will really remember for eternity. And so I think those are powerful moments. And if you think about, how we all woke up on Sunday, December 1st, it was not good, right? We all woke up with, oh my gosh, what's next? And I think what the fundamental lesson of the whole season, I think, boils down to that one day, because we had a choice to make. And so just like in life, just like as a dad, as a husband, as a leader, as a member of the media, we all have choices on how we approach things. And our team had a choice. Our coaches had a choice. Do we lay down and just quit and call the CFP committee and say, hey, I know that invitation's coming, but we're actually going to say no because of what happened, the day before? Or do we say, you know what, we have a great team. We're ready to roll. We got to regroup. We got to dust off. Hey, we don't like what happened. We have to dust off. And so I think just resiliency, perseverance, leadership, love, faith, commitment to one another. We all obviously talk about the brotherhood here at Ohio State. Look, brothers don't always agree. And the team had a team meeting. They had to get some things off their chest about how to move forward. That's what brothers do, right? That's what siblings do. And hey, maybe there's a disagreement, or maybe, hey, we know we're talented, but we need to get on the same page, and you have to have tough conversations. So I just think the way the entire culture of the program is led by Coach Day allowed everything to unfold when there was adversity. You know, after the Oregon game, you didn't really feel like you were down and out because, right, top 5 matchup, you lost by 1 point on the road, had the ball, you know, maybe could have scored, you know, would have had to make the field goal, whatever. But you still felt like, okay, we're alive. But then losing that last game, it really felt like, oh my God, are we alive? And we made a choice and a decision. So lots to unpack there. Noah, you know, also goes into the landscape of college football in the 12-team playoff era. Look, the loser of the last game of the year is probably going to be a playoff team, right? Look, that program up there, they're not going away either. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be good. We're always going to be in the hunt. And so the fascinating part about the 12-team playoff, what we learned is you're alive. At 10-2, you're alive. Now, we don't like to lose that game, and that game is always going to mean what it means. But we also learned that the new era of college football has changed, because the year before, you lose that game and you're out. Now, we're in, and we won. So just a lot to unpack and a lot to learn related to the season.
And as you mentioned, so much changing, right? With the transfer portal right now, as we record this, we're in the spring portal. I know Ryan has talked a lot about the fact that after the season ends, there's that like 5-day period where teams can poach, and he wants change on that. But I mean, even with the spring portal and with the spring game being taken away from some teams, don't want it anymore. Right. Just where do you stand on all of this and some of the things Ryan has talked about, and just the portal in general? How do you see this right now and moving forward?
Yeah. How long is your show?
Yeah.
How long do we have here?
Couple hours.
A couple hours. Yeah, we could do an extended version of this interview. You know, really, it goes down to we have to fix the football calendar overall. We have to fix when high school prospects sign. We have to do, I think we can modify the playoff schedule a little bit too, so there's some things being discussed there. Definitely the transfer portal windows need to change. Really, there should be one portal window. No one is against player movement. Everybody gets that, right? That's where we are right now from a legal standpoint. It's hard to justify anything else. So we're all in favor of the player movement. It just needs to be structured differently. If we ever want to get back an academic nexus to this conversation, which we all say we do, we believe in that, we need to move the portal windows to the spring at the end of the academic year. That can cause some issues during mid-year transfers and things like that, but if we ever really want to get back the academic nexus, if we want to get back to roster certainty, now we actually will have contracts with athletes around their name, image, likeness rights from the institution. To me, that needs to match up better with sort of the fiscal calendar and the academic calendar. So there's a lot of things that need to change regarding the recruiting calendar, the transfer portal calendar, the playing season calendar, and then that relates to the spring game phenomenon. You saw a lot of programs go away from that. They had whatever they had. They had open practices. You know, we announced a showcase because at that time we didn't really know, okay, would we be able to host, you know, live football? We ended up doing that. We flipped it to the spring game. Yeah. So even we went through that process. What is the spring practice? Do you really need to have 15 practices, or do you have an OTA model, right, that leads into the summer? And so, again, there's a lot of things being discussed. Luckily, the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, the ACC, we're all kind of leading a discussion. The problem, the challenge is the governance structure and how we, you know, govern all these things. That needs to be a little more efficient. So there's probably 4 or 5 different elements that all play into the calendar, but we all recognize that there needs to be change. And I hope after the House case is settled that we can really focus on these fundamental governance things within, you know, college football.
And I want to ask, too, about the situation at Tennessee, just with their quarterback, Nico Iamaleava, and what happened there. Not in terms of that, but in terms of how significant do you think that is, and how can that affect college sports, especially here, moving forward, knowing a situation like that happens and how you can move past it?
Yeah, again, everyone's in favor of the players receiving more, whether it's NIL, whether it's going to be third-party NIL, the way it's been the last 4 years, it's really just been a pay-for-play model, right? And so we're restructuring some things mainly around the house case settlement. And so some of this leads to there's not a lot of transparency in the system. So do we really know what offers were being made or what negotiation? No one really knows. Only Tennessee and the family and the young man really know what. So the lack of transparency leads to some of this chaos. So can we get some kind of transparency? I think there are some elements that we can get to, but you may not have full transparency because we're still talking about college students. So the lack of transparency leads to some of this, but I do believe it just revealed that structurally, again, portal windows and timing, again, what type of agreements do we have with the individual athletes in the institution? How binding are those? How legally structured are those? There's a lot of things that go into it. So I think the lessons are we do need more clarity. We do need more structure. We definitely need to fix the calendar. And so perhaps that conversation would have happened in May if the portal windows were different. Perhaps there was lead-up conversations and they would have known kind of what the direction was, and then there's just a clearer pathway versus maybe a more chaotic environment. So we don't have all the details on that one, but I think it does provide a cautionary tale to say we just need more structure. That's not really the NCAA's fault, right? It's not the family's fault. It's not the young man's. It's not Tennessee's fault. It's just there really needs to be more structure around this entire, ecosystem of college athletics.
And I want to shift gears a little to men's basketball. Obviously coming off not a season that Jake wanted, not a season that the program wanted, but you've said time and time again how much trust you have in Jake to lead this program back to where they should be.
Yeah.
What gives you the confidence in him as a person, as a coach? And I mean, what do you see in him?
I really think it goes back to when he and I first interacted, a year ago when I first got here to Ohio State. You saw the connectivity with the players. You saw his recruiting acumen. You saw his game day coaching ability, live in action. He had that interim period, and we created a lot of energy. Didn't move the needle to get in the NCAA tournament last year, but had a great run in the NIT tournament. So you just saw a lot of things kind of in real life, real-time action. Again, Jake in this era, this modern era, being somebody who can relate to the players, somebody who has that energy both on the court, off the court, somebody who has seen high-level basketball. He has seen Ohio State. He wasn't directly involved in it, but he's seen when Ohio State basketball is cruising at a high level, what it can be. So he's kind of seen that up close and personal through his brother and through other coaching relationships. So I think he knows what the ingredients are. The Ohio-made aspect of his background, I think, means a lot. I remember I interacted with Thad Matta soon after he left Ohio State back in 2018, and I said, what was the formula? And he said, 6-hour radius. If we got the best players within a 6-hour radius, we're a Final Four team. We can be a championship team. And so Jake has those relationships in this region and also nationally. So there's just a lot of things to it. I think we have a great staff. I think our staff is really mature. I think Jake is maturing, and Jake learned a lot. We did not meet expectations this year. He knows that. We know that. But in terms of building this in the modern era, we've got to embrace basketball more as an athletic department, as a community. A lot of donors have stepped up, whether it's our collectives or things like that to support, the team. We can all do those kind of things. We have a lot of things in motion. We kind of need to make Ohio State basketball cool, if you will, right? For students, for recruits, for our fans. So we're working on a lot of things around game day atmosphere. We're doing that in football too, but can we change the lighting in the Schottenstein Center to make it more of a stage? Can we do some things around the court? Can we get our students more involved? Can we change the type of music and when we play different kinds of music? So we're going through a whole iteration around our game day atmosphere because we need to embrace Ohio State basketball. Jake's the right guy, and he's going to take us where we need to go. We stubbed our toe this year. We recognize that, but we know the ingredients are there to be a great program.
How quick do you hope some of those changes come?
Look, we're working on the in-game things, the Schottenstein Center things right now. Obviously, Jake's putting the roster together. We know part of this is you need to have a great team and be exciting, and I think we're seeing those people. I think the skill level of the basketball talent has definitely gone up, of the guys that are committed, the guys that he's talking to, the guys that are returning. Obviously, we got our nucleus, of scorers coming back. So I think the brand of basketball will be different because I think the skill level has increased. But the off-the-court changes, the in-game changes, we want those things to really be turned on by this coming season.
And from a roster standpoint, how do you see what needs to happen and change for the men's team to get back to a perennial tournament team? What is the specifics that go into the roster building, and how far off do you think that they are from that point?
Yeah, you're in the Big Ten, so it's a sort of a rugged, physical style of game, right? And so can you match that? Interior, can you match that on the back? Our backcourt is obviously going to be returning with all that experience. Now I think it's about the interior play, and then some of those matchups within the Big Ten, and just being able to weather. Look, we played a tough non-conference schedule. Jake's not afraid of that.
Yeah.
That actually kept us alive. We were alive until really the last weekend. I talked to one of the basketball committee members, and we were still alive even after we got knocked out of the Big Ten tournament because we played a tough non-conference and we had some key wins. So to me, all of that, what that looks like is you have to be able to adapt to this game. The Big Ten is not for the faint of heart, which means if you're in that upper quadrant of the Big Ten, you can be a high seed. You can make a great run, in the NCAA tournament. So those are the things that we want to get back to. Ohio State basketball should be good. It can be good. We've got moments in our history. We've got, we have won a national championship. We've been to a lot of Final Fours. Let's rely on some of that history, but also adapt in this modern era, and Jake's the guy to do that.
Sticking with basketball, shifting though to the women, they've been really impressive for a long time, but it just feels like the past couple of years especially, they haven't been able to get over that hump, right? Like, what do you think, what needs to change, and what do you think it takes for them to sort of get over that with McGuff?
Yeah, I think, part of that is, just being tested. We get tested in the Big Ten. Maybe we didn't get as tested as we needed to be in the non-conference schedule, because then when you're playing those tough NCAA tournament teams, if you saw those teams in November and December, you're ready for that. Again, on the men's side, we did that on the men's side. So, I think scheduling can be, examined a little bit. Look, Coach McGuff recruits at a high level. He knows the game. He knows Ohio. He knows how to do it here. We have, tapped out in that second round the last 2 years. We don't want that to happen, especially when you're hosting. You want to be able to get over that hump, especially get to a second weekend. So we know we need to break that barrier after the last couple of years. But again, same thing. In the modern era, you better be adaptable, and Coach McGuff is adaptable. Again, I think our staff is great. Adding Katie Smith to the staff, I think, has really added some energy, her experience, the WNBA. Everybody we recruit believes that they can play in the WNBA. There's no better person to really talk about that and teach them that than Katie. So the combination of Coach McGuff's experience, our staff, the energy that everyone on our staff brings, I think we'll get back there where we can make a great run in the NCAA tournament.
And Cody McMahon leaving obviously leaves a bit of a mark, that a gap, I guess, so to speak. I mean, who do you look for or look to in that program to sort of take that next step in leadership, not even on the court, right, or play on the court, but off the court as well?
Yeah, there's going to be some holes to fill, right? And so whether that's experienced players in the transfer portal, Jelani's going to be, sophomore. She played every game except a few games that she was injured, right? So I think you're going to see her leadership, really step up. And so those pieces will all come together. And that's what it's great about the offseason is you can build those. You can lead into the practice schedule, in the fall, build that leadership. But I think Jelani's going to be the one where people are going to be, we've got to follow her. She can lead the way, dynamic player. And so those things, I think, is what Coach will, really rely on.
I know you were with the women's ice hockey team right during their Frozen Four. Total heartbreak at the end there. How do you talk to their coach, players, just to sort of push them forward and understand that you have to get ready for next season to push and continue to get back to that point?
Yeah, you don't know what's more frustrating, right? Would you rather just get blown out, or the way we lost was just so emotionally heartbreaking,
Yeah.
right? I mean, 18 seconds away, and sort of a, maybe a controversial call. Did we cover the puck in the crease? I mean, I'm learning all these hockey rules. Was it sort of inconclusive? Maybe it could have gone a different way. But all you can do in that moment is you put your arm around them, you console them, you say, look, we were right here at the doorstep, meaning you'd rather have a program that at least gets to the doorstep and you're competing for championships. And in this case, it didn't go our way, right? Wisconsin's a great team. They only had one loss to us all year, right? And then, we dominated the game, and then again, 18 seconds left. So knowing that the ingredients are there, you kind of just dust yourself off, and Nadine's going to continue to run this program at the highest level. We have a lot of talent coming back. She'll mix in probably some key transfers. I know she's doing that right now. And then as we look at the future of ice hockey here for both programs, the men have a lot of momentum too. They had a great run, overachieved. Picked last in the Big Ten. Made it all the way to to the regionals, the Big Ten championship game, lost in overtime. So we were right at the doorstep for a championship. And so now what we need to do is really figure out the ice arena equation and really figure out the funding model, figure out the timeline. So we're working on those pieces. And that'll really give both programs a jolt in a big way. So we're committed to a single ice arena that would host men's and women's programs. We would get the men out of the Schottenstein Center, which frees up some infrastructure in the Schottenstein Center, which makes that building better. So we're committed to that. We got to get the funding plan organized. We're working on a couple pieces, we hope, later this summer. But both programs have a ton of energy, a ton of momentum, and the ice arena, I think, will give them a jolt. But being around Nadine and Steve, the intensity that hockey takes and sort of the character and the spirit that both coaches have, I think has been a lot of fun for me to get to know and see up close.
I know you mentioned a little bit the time frame, but what really could a time frame look like for that new rink?
Yeah, we hope by this summer we can outline the funding plan, and then we'll have to go raise money, and that will be in a quiet phase. And if that takes, let's say, a year to raise additional capital dollars, then we have to go to the Board of Trustees and get approval to hire an architect, and that's a couple months process. So if we could somehow go to the board for approval of an architect sometime in early 2026, then the runway to kind of design everything and get everything up and running for the next round of approval is probably a year. So if that's early 2027, and then it's probably an 18-month project. So we're looking at several years of a pathway based on approvals, design, construction. But the key is we got to get this thing launched. That's the key. Get the funding plan launched, get our capital campaign launched. We're having conversations with donors, but until we have really the true pathway, you really can't have a true conversation and expect a commitment. So we need the outline by this summer, and that'll allow us to press the pedal and try to get this thing off the ground.
I wanted to ask too, with the changes on campus regarding DEI, how do you think that can affect the athletic department moving forward?
We know there's programmatic things that we're analyzing within the athletic department. Of course, we have to follow, the state laws, the executive orders, all of those things. Everyone, you have to do that. You have to follow the law. What we don't want to change is really how we make people feel and how people feel around our program. We want to be welcoming. We want to make sure we have the right platforms, the right approaches that meet the standard of the law, but also to make sure that, look, we want to be inclusive. We want to be welcoming to everyone, whether it's our fans, parents, prospects, current athletes. So there's some programmatic elements that we're, adjusting based on the law. But again, how do people feel when they walk in our buildings? How do people feel around our coaches, our staff, our facilities? None of those things should have to change around any of this. It's really the policies and procedures that we're looking at, but the feeling of being, welcoming to all is what we want to make sure that we continue. The people, the tradition, the excellence, those are our core values. Those are time tested. So each thing that we do needs to meet the people needs to match our tradition and needs to make sure excellence, is our standard. So those are the things that will remain true.
And I know the landscape of the cheer team, especially here, has changed a little bit with funding, no more competitions, just game day stuff, I think, for the most part for them. How have you navigated that, and what does the future look like for that program specifically?
Yeah, we want to embrace all of our Spirit Squad programs, from dance to cheer to Brutus. Obviously, Brutus is probably one of the most iconic mascots in all of college athletics. So we want them to be at the forefront. On the cheerleading side, it really came down to, we're doing a whole analysis of every department, and there's efficiencies that we're finding in every department. Cheerleading happened to be one of those programs based on some staffing things that were popping up. That was one of the first ones. But there's going to be other things where we have to just change the way we spend our money and change the way we operate. We'll have less athletes across the entire athletic department because of roster limitations based on the house case. That means there'll be people that are just not needed because there's not as many athletes. So cheerleading was one of the first approaches that we took. It happened last summer. So what we've done is we've just tried to communicate. We've tried to show love and compassion to our athletes that are in our cheerleading program. We've tried to be very clear about what the mission is, but also understanding that the financial dynamics of our program, where we have 36 sports plus a robust Spirit Squad, we have to just make sure we can pay for all this. We're self-sustaining, we generate all of our own revenue. So it was kind of a timing thing based on some personnel matters. It led to, okay, we are looking at the entire athletic department differently. And so all of those things, people may not like how we do it, or what we do, but how we do it, how we communicate, we want to be very cautious about those things. We tried to do that. We tried to communicate the best we can. And that's really all we can do in these processes.
I wanted to touch a teeny bit on the house case too. I'm curious, how do you think the house case will affect international student athletes here?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something that we constantly talk about. We have probably about 10% of our athletes, maybe a little bit more, are international athletes. Right now, based on their educational visa, they cannot receive NIL opportunities while they're here in the United States. They can receive them when they're back in their own country or somewhere outside the U.S. So from that standpoint, the house case doesn't really change their status, where they can't receive this NIL money. They can't receive, work, if you will, while they're on an educational visa, right? So none of those things are being impacted by the house case. We believe that there could be some special carve-out, and it would have to happen through federal legislation that we would have to pursue. Could you classify international student athletes differently somehow? What that is, I don't have all the answers, but there has been some pursuits around, if they're here educationally, but they're an athlete, could they also participate the same way our other athletes do? Those are the questions we're asking. A lot to work on there, but we want to support our international athletes. We know they're important. How that looks moving forward, there's going to be some things that we have to examine.
The last thing I have for you, in the coming year, of course, the football team is reloading. What are some other sports that are on the brink, I guess, or on the cusp of getting over that hump that people should keep an eye on that they haven't in the past?
Yeah, just kind of in the moment, women's golf, has had such a great spring. Carrie Hollenball has just she's won 4 tournaments as an individual. So I think women's golf is something to pay attention to. What Ty Tucker has done, 19 straight Big Ten championships, another top-ranked team. Hopefully we can get over the hump and get that national championship. So we're always going to pay attention on the men's tennis side. Women's tennis is going to be right there in the mix too, I think, for a strong tournament run. Had a tough loss this week against the team up north. Look what our softball team is doing. To be ranked in the top 25 after being nowhere on the radar the last couple years, what Coach 2K has done with our softball team has just been phenomenal. The amount of home runs we've hit, the explosiveness on offense. We probably still need some more pitching depth, but just the quick turnaround in that program, I think, is going to be really exciting to follow as she continues. Her personality, holy cow. You talk about somebody with confidence. her and Nadine actually probably come from the same DNA, just with their confidence and just how they lead. I think it's really fascinating. I'm going to leave out a lot, but look, baseball's having a tough start to Justin's career here. But if you look at just how he's built, where he's from, his Ohio ties, he has seen we're going to get baseball turned around here. We need to invest more in atmosphere around baseball too. So I think there could be an upside with our baseball program. I'm going to leave a bunch out. Wrestling, right? At some point, hey, how do we get over the hump in wrestling? That's been one where we're close. Coach Ryan's an unbelievable leader. Wrestling has been really fun to watch. Men's lacrosse. Let's knock on wood here. Let's finish strong. Let's have a great run in the Big Ten tournament and postseason. So what Coach Myers has done to flip things around. As we get into the fall, I really want to see, our volleyball team back in action. I think Jen has done a really good job of kind of putting the roster pieces back together. I think we're on the verge of maybe seeing something there as well. So I want to see that as we get into the fall. Women's soccer, I think, is going to be there. Men's soccer, Final Four team last year. A lot of pieces coming back. So what does all that look like? So just a lot of excitement on campus. The great thing about what kind of aha moments for me have been, it's Ohio State. So it already has this upper echelon championship brand, but there's so much potential. Whether it's our teams, whether it's our business side of things, whether it's more donors, whether it's more sponsorship activity, we have still not reached our full potential. And you think about, wait a second, it's Ohio State. Of course they have. No, we haven't. Because there's so many people that are Buckeyes. There's so many people that want to see us do well. Excellence is the standard. We have great alignment with our trustees, President Carter, the cabinet on campus. So that's what has me really, really fired up, is that we can still put a lot of things together that move the needle even more so, because we are Ohio State, and the breadth of who we engage with and who are Buckeye fans is almost unlimited within college athletics. So a lot of exciting things to come.